What's up guys, RussLyman here, and in today's DIY video I'm going to show you how I customized this Switch NES controller to be a Super Mario Bros. 3 theme. Let's check it out. So these controllers here you can only get if you sign up for Nintendo's online subscription service, and they allow you to purchase them and they come in a 2-pack. Well, my fellow Patreon supporter Alex Kaz wanted me to customize one of them for him. So I said, sure, what theme you want? And he said Super Mario 3, which is definitely one of my favorite games. And these look exactly like a regular NES controller, except they are lacking a cord to plug in because they connect via Bluetooth. And how you charge them, they actually slide onto your Switch to charge, and that is the only way you can charge them. You can't plug in any type of cord. So here's some gameplay of me testing out the controller, making sure it works and plays the games fantastically. So of course we gotta open this up, take it apart so we can customize it. And it just has 6 screws on the back of the controller. Once those are removed, you can remove the backing and take out the circuit board and all the innards of the controller. Now all the parts I am not painting or customizing, I like to just put in a Ziploc bag for safekeeping and put to the side. And I just use the tip of my X-Acto blade to get under the overlay so I can peel it up, because I'll be using a custom one at the end. And sometimes there's a little bit of sticky residue, so a little Goo Gone, let that sit and wipe it off with a rag. Once that was all set, I'm using some Epoxy Sculpt. This is a 2-part epoxy. When you combine them together, equal parts. The epoxy hardens overnight, 24 hours. No need to put it in a kiln or anything like that. So I was thinking of the theme for Mario 3, and I kind of wanted it to look like Mario in his raccoon suit. Maybe put some ears on the controller and put a tail on it. I thought it would look really awesome and stand out. So I'm going to start shaping that with the clay. The tail part was easy enough. It's basically just a big piece of clay, and you roll it out until you get the shape correctly and just stick it on the back of the controller. Now the ears were a little bit tricky because the controller still has to come apart for me to put the pieces back into it when I'm assembling it. So I kind of molded the ears and let them harden on top of the controller, and then remove them and split them down the middle. This way there's 2 halves of them. And you could use a little bit of water to smooth out the clay. I just put some on my finger there. This way it's not thumbprints and anything like that in the clay. You can kind of rub it around and get a more smooth finish. So here it is after it hardened 24 hours later, and well, the tail popped off. It didn't stay adhered, but no big deal because we could always just glue that back on. Now I'm just doing some shaping with some sandpaper. I have some 60 grit sandpaper, so I'm just trying to get the ears to look a little more uniform. And well, I sanded down too much and the ear popped off, unfortunately. The troubles with these ears. So I kept pressing on forward and cleaned up everything, and I got out my 5-minute epoxy. It's just a 2-part epoxy you mix together, and it would adhere and harden in about 5 minutes. So I just put a liberal amount onto the tail and stuck that on, and then it was onto the ears as well. And now just doing a test fitting of it, and it seems to fit together pretty good. Both halves can separate and go back together, and there's not too much of a gap where the ears are. So it was time to get some paint on the controller, so I took them out to the paint booth, and we were laying some primer on the controller so it has a uniform color before we lay down the actual color. So I just gave it about 10 minutes in between coats and 3 coats of primer, and then it was on to a base coat. I'm using this stone textured paint, so it gives the controller a more textured feel. The color of the stone doesn't matter because we're going to paint over it anyways, but I just want that texture on there. This way it kind of looks like fur or something like that of the raccoon. So here it is after it dried, and we're putting it back together to test fit it, and it's looking pretty good. This is where I ran into an issue that I totally forgot. You have to charge the controller with the slider on the top of the controller, and you can't do that with the ears in the way. There's no way to hook it onto your Switch, so we have a flaw in our design. So I was back to the drawing board to see what I could do because I still wanted to have the ears on the controller. So I went out to the store and got some rare earth magnets, pretty strong magnets. So if I can make the ears detachable, you could then charge the controller, and when it's charged, take it off and reattach the ears. That was the plan. So again, it was back to sculpting new ears on the controller, and we were going to insert the magnets after that. And I was much happier with how these ears came out. The ones before were more rounded at the tops of them, and this one I want it more pointed. They're supposed to be pointed, so I was kind of happy that I got another shot to make the ears a little bit better. Now I did sculpt it on the top of the controller, but I just ended up breaking them off of that there because I'm just going to use the magnets to attach it back on, but I want to make sure when it hardened, it was at the right spot on the controller. And a little trick I was doing, I added a little bit of paint on the magnet and pressed it down on the top of the controller so I could see where the other magnet needed to be. And then I just took my Dremel out and hollowed out a little hole that I would put the other magnet to. So this way it had 2 magnets in the controller and 2 in the ears itself. Alright, once I got the magnets to fit, it was time to paint the controller, and I'm just using some basic acrylic paints. I got my Mario 3 box out there for inspiration on colors, so I'm going to use some reds, blues, browns, and blacks, of course, for the raccoon portion there. So I started painting the ears and the back of the controller all brown, because that's kind of like a base coat there for the raccoon, and then of course I'll go back and add the stripes, the black stripes on his tail. And one way to speed things up with drying is, of course, using a heat gun. I have it on a low setting, and make sure you keep it moving over the part, and it'll dry the paint quicker so you can do another coat. And that's how I get multiple coats done in a short amount of time. And then to do a quick weathering technique, I just used some watered down black paint, smeared it around the controller, and I'm just using a rag to kind of rub it away or rub it in to get that desired effect. And here's what it looks like up close once everything is dry. And now we're going to take it out to the paint booth to add the clear coat to it to seal everything together. Now I love using this Rust-Oleum Crystal Clear. I think it gives it a great shine and protection. And again, I'm spraying about 3 coats on this, 10 minutes in between coats. Now I'm just going to add the custom decal over it, the custom overlay. It's a vinyl overlay, a nice bright yellow to kind of mimic that box color on there. And it's printed on a clear sheet on the front so you can line it up and then peel that protective sheet off once you got it placed where you need it. And then I just start adding the buttons back in and assembling the circuit board and getting everything tightened up and ready to go back together. Then I'm just doing some quick test fitting on my Switch itself to make sure it's going to connect and charge, and it does. So, success! Let's check out the final reveal of the Super Mario 3 Switch controller. So yeah, Super Mario Brothers 3 right there, and you can pop the ears off easily and charge it, and you're good to go. Once it's charged and you wanted to put it back on the shelf, these easily attach right back on and look awesome. I'm really happy how it turned out, so hopefully Alex enjoys having this in his collection and also playing it because it's functional. If you guys like this build and want to see other controller builds, I have a full playlist on the channel that you guys can check out. If you guys aren't subscribed already, consider doing so. I put out weekly videos. If you guys want to support the channel, I have merch. This is one of my custom shirts to create, play, and build. There's a link to my Etsy store in the description below. Subscribe if you're not already, and as always, gamers, I'm RussLyman, and keep your world fun bit by bit. I'll see you next video.
And I want to give a super shout out to all my Patreon supporters: Dan Buchanan, Joey Ellis, George Sandoval, Joseph Riviera, Nintendo, Joe Sheevy, David Apuzzo, Maynard, Brian Culpepper, TechWizX, Matthew Hannigan, Alex Kaz, Ayan Oshi, Gannaman, and all my Patreon supporters. Link below if you want to join, and I'll see you later.